Good afternoon. This is a demonstration today for CLM Plus Art of the Possible, performed by Cimplifi, platinum partner of DocuSign. Cimplifi supports DocuSign clients on enterprise applications for CLM and contract analytics, really driving digital transformation initiatives, again, across the enterprise and across multiple use cases. So the demonstration today is following on a demonstration that we did live last week. Excited to be back in front of you for a few minutes on a condensed version thereof so that you can distribute this recording, as necessary, as needed across the group. So thanks in advance for your time. We'll keep this relatively brief, but I do want to hit the high points of what you saw last week and walk through a demonstration primarily around third-party paper processing and how the AI capability really becomes a force multiplier and empowerment tool for your internal user base. So with that, we're going to move forward. We talked about DocuSign capabilities for the agreement process end to end. While this screen has quite a bit of content on it, I wanted to call out a key thing here, and that is we take a very holistic approach to contract analytics, AI capabilities, workflow architecture, the digital transformation process, template management, how it all interconnects together, including e-signature. So while DocuSign is best known or most widely known for the e-signature capability, the underlying capabilities of the entire agreement cloud are really tremendous and give internal users the capabilities to execute more quickly from origination through execution, including post-execution processes as necessary. So what you'll see today is really a holistic approach to how we see all of these components benefiting our clients. As we go through the narrative, again, it's fictional, mocked up for purposes of demonstration today. We're going to talk about agreement generation. We're going to talk about negotiation support, analytics, and we'll probably pause before we get to the e-signature capability just because everybody's so familiar with that, and I want to keep the recording relatively short. However, the key benefit here is to understand that for different personas on the internal user base, we're really supporting enhanced functionality and an empowerment capability that's at their fingertips. We're also meeting folks where they work today. So from a change management perspective, we're not rip and replacing the entire, organizational structure or the process that they have today. We're only designing a future state that's an improved version of the current state. So as we create CLM workflows and we build architecture and we talk about capabilities, functionality, we do see this as a utility for the business. And so it needs to be fit for purpose, and it needs to promote enablement and also adoption within the organization. So you'll be seeing document generation today, review, negotiation steps, analytics. And I'm also going to show the external interaction point, what it looks like for your counterparties. One other thing that has been touched on with the DocuSign in particular is the integration with Coupa. So for today, what you're going to see is an upstream integration with Salesforce. It functions similarly, and what we're talking about from a data integrity perspective is the ability to push in a two-way flow data components from one system to the next. What this really does is it gives an enhanced capability to keep uniformity of those data points, to keep client reference data, for instance, in a state that's fit for purpose for any system, whether it's upstream or downstream. What I mean by downstream is post-execution. If you have internal requirements where documents and metadata profiles need to be sent to other systems of record, all of that integration work is pretty seamless with DocuSign. Tremendous capability at your fingertips. And again, the configuration for this, the architecture behind it, the planning that goes into it, it's all of the component parts that would be worked out through the discovery phase with your team, where we really take your requirements and your expertise and your guidance and create a solution that's specific for Capital One and for your success. So as we're talking about process flow, and this is just an example mocked up again for demonstration purposes, but we're really talking about CLM system from start to finish, from origination, from draft to, post-execution steps as necessary. And so while we have different swim lanes, and while this architecture is very, no pun intended, simplified version of the process, what we're showing here is the ability to create controls, the ability to set the guardrails for the contracting process, the ability to create repeatable and defensible processes that are always going to be followed. And so from a template management perspective, and I'll go into that momentarily once you start to see the CLM environment, we're really giving legal teams and operation teams the ability to have a self-contained universe that eliminates, the need to go to SharePoint for any kind of documentation, the need for any kind of email and attachment confusion that might exist, different parties not really interacting with one another potentially in a current state in an optimized way. So creating a CLM container workflow that really brings everyone together on an internal basis and keeps your external parties in a good fluid state in terms of their interaction. We create an audit trail from end to end for that process. We're also defining the process with your team to make sure that internal users have the ability to route the document as necessary. Where we can include automation and expedite processes, we will. Where we need to have internal controls or secondary legal review points or escalated elements for approval, we can do that too. So it's really, again, art of the possible today. But from a high level, just want to talk about this again, origination through execution. Hopefully your creative juices are flowing a little bit. You can see how, ultimately you may want to design a CLM workflow for you all, whether it's use case specific or if it's going to be enterprise expansion. You really have the capability to design contracting processes that are going to benefit your team. So what you see on screen currently is a mocked up version of Salesforce. Salesforce with the Capital One branding, obviously, for today's demonstration. A couple of key things that I want to highlight at this screen. Number one is for your internal users, you can meet them where they work. So if you have internal user base, it's going to primarily interact with Salesforce or another system, and that's their primary place of interaction for document generation, for looking for where their contract may be, where's their opportunity, what does it look like, how's the account set up, all of that reference data that's available to them. You can set it up so that their interaction point is a single point of contact, and that can be within Salesforce as an example. What you see here within the chevrons, we've got a tracker bar. So the progress and the path that we have laid out here, while fictional and just tied to today's narrative workflow, it really gives you the ability to track on any given day at any given time where the document is, what stage in the process are you, full transparency, and transparency gain is a key theme that we're going to talk about today. So within the details on this opportunity, we've got some basic reference data, again, sample purposes. However, it's important to note that this data can immediately be pushed into the contract as needed if you're using standard templates. And alternatively, if we're going to upload third-party paper, which is what I want to show today, we can have a data profile associated with that. So as we talk about contracts and we talk about commoditized components within that and metadata profiles and the integrity of that and how that facilitates reporting requirements that you might have or transparency requirements in terms of process and approvals and everything else, it all fits together pretty seamlessly. We also have the ability to access the documents from the screen. So single click navigation is going to be able to take you to contracts within the CLM repository from a single click access point. As process elements are updated within the CLM workflow, we're writing back to Salesforce those key components. You can write back data, you can write back things like status or stage, and all of that, again, is to provide your internal users with the most user-friendly and informative tool that's at their disposal. What you can see up here is the generate contract button. This single click button is going to take me to a document generation screen. So again, while I'm that Salesforce first initiator, that first contact point from your internal user, I have the ability to engage templates within CLM. Now, the beauty of this as a CLM, template management perspective is that while limited for demonstration purposes here to a master services agreement and third-party paper upload functionality, you can contain all of the relevant Capital One templates within the environment in a single place. What you're doing there is you're creating a single source of truth. Some of the efficiency gains that we see immediately are that clients are able to manage the templates from a centralized location. What this means in practice is if the legal team needs to make an update to legal content within the document or a regulatory change requires content updates within a standard template, you're making a single edit to the templates that are effective, whether you're doing it with the clause library, which I'll show momentarily, or whether you're doing it within the master template itself. That single change will guarantee that every document that's actioned thereafter is using the latest and greatest copy. So again, limited demonstration today, but what you're going to see is the ability to have that centralization from a data perspective, as well as from a template management perspective, gives you a great gain against typical current states where we've got templates stored on SharePoint in different areas, and there's no real control or guarantee that folks that are actioning new documents are actioning the exact copy they need to. Again, there's some internal governance structures around that and programmatic approaches that we advise on frequently. What's the cadence of those updates? If you're going to update templates, who has the appropriate permissions and authority level to do that? All of that can be worked out, but the system is really in place to give you that greater capability. What you see on screen right now is that data flow from Salesforce. So we've got the account number, we've got account name, we have different elements that are directly flowing through from Salesforce, and this gives us the ability to drag and drop and upload third-party paper. Since we touched on templates with some frequency already, I do want to show an MSA as an example. If this MSA were the Capital One standard, you've got standard content that you want to include. We've got the data integrity element with field values that are coming directly from Salesforce. Importantly, what you see here with the red asterisk, these are required fields. Anything without an asterisk is not necessarily required, but it's important to note that we can open these fields up for edits. Depending on what your view of that is, you can open things up to edits or not based on your sense of that data point. So for example, if we needed to update the signer name and signer email, we can create field values that allow the user to edit that. If that value has to get written back to Salesforce, we can set that up as well. We talked about the clause library functionality a little bit, and the important thing here to note is that a modular approach to templates is often a huge efficiency gain. So instead of having 50 different templates for 50 different states, you can use clause libraries in the governing law section, just as an easy example, to commoditize what that looks like. So as the user selects, whether you open this up to user selection or not, the user can choose what provision they want included within the document. Now, the New York selection can also be driven by a data point. So if we have New York as the billing state, we can automatically set this to New York. This can also be read-only. It can remove that user input element, but we want to show that here just as an example. Same thing for payment terms. Payment terms can be adjusted, again, demonstration purposes today, but what we're really talking about is conditional content to stand up standard agreements. When I click next and generate the document preview, what this is going to show is the example MSA, Capital One branding with the content that you just saw coming from Salesforce. So the first draft of this agreement is expedited. In the preamble of this agreement, you're going to see some of the key component parts, the effective date, counterparty name, everything else. As we stand up standard agreements, we're really accelerating the time to that first draft. So this first draft has been created with very limited manual inputs required outside of the information packet that exists in your previous system. So when we're talking about ROI of a CLM workflow, what does that really translate into? You're talking about accelerated cycle times to execution. And this is just one way that really drives that efficiency. Toggling back quickly to third-party paper. Again, we've got the data profile associated. We're going to do the upload functionality here because what I do want to show as part of the art of the possible is where does the AI capability come in? DocuSign has an AI capability that's embedded within the agreement cloud architecture. And what that does is it gives clients the ability to do some automated risk surfacing, automated risk assessment, and really becomes a force multiplier for legal teams in particular, but for any user that has a key area of focus on documents. We see this apply in two general areas most frequently. One is with third-party paper, so that you can expedite that first review of the document, but then also on standard templates, if they were heavily negotiated and they come back from the counterparty, you can deploy the same technology to make the same assessment and automate some of that risk surfacing as needed. So on the left-hand side here, I've dragged and dropped a quick document for example purposes today. Again, it's third-party paper within the narrative that we have for this demo. The internal user has just taken this document from the counterparty. They haven't assessed it for more than 2 minutes. We just want to see what the system is going to do for us from an advantage add perspective. As I click save, distinguished from what you saw previously with the standard template, this is going to take me to a different screen. And what that means is that third-party paper now is uploaded into the system. while that task is being generated. So it's going to generate a task for an internal user, whether that's me as the initiator or whether it's the next person on the team, for instance, a legal user who's going to make their review of what I just submitted as third-party paper. We're going to see how that task allocation and internal management of personnel within the CLM universe really, helps teams understand where things are at and be able to offset some common stopgaps, like folks are out of office or the contract is in someone's email and needs to be, exposed to the group so that the group can make the appropriate action on that document. As we get into the CLM universe again, I do want to talk about a little bit of dashboard reporting capabilities. So what we've seen so far is that initiation point. If I'm that internal user and I'm in CLM, I can see an array of information at any given time to the extent that I have permissions to do that. So we've got things like effective date, governing law, contract type. We were talking about commoditizing the information profiles against documents. But importantly, we also have the ability to see workflow level details. So the aggregate view, and again, this is a demo environment. So what you're seeing today is mocked up for demo purposes, but we can say, where's the contract? At what stage is it? Who's it assigned to? Who's the initiator? How long has it been at that stage? What does it look like? And we start to give line of sight into a lot of details around the contract as it's being processed. From the task view, which is what I talked about 2 seconds ago, we can start to see tasks as they present to the users in real time and in real life. And what this looks like is we've got multiple tiers of user groups. We've got the legal team, we've got a legal tier 2, we've got negotiators. Anybody that's under my management, for instance, I can see as a managed user. What this is really doing is it's giving people the ability to act on documents in the process from origination through execution in a way that's very organized and structured and takes into account the security requirements or the permission requirements or the approval processes that you have internally. And again, that first architecture that you saw in the process flow diagram in the PowerPoint, that's the behind the scenes sort of architecture and design that's going to support who gets what when. So one thing that we've talked about is the ability to use CLM as the interface and see what it looks like within CLM. But it's important to note that your users don't need to be logged into CLM 24 hours a day, and that's not the expectation. Instead, we create email notifications, and a lot of these are default functionality that's just automatic part of the product. You'll get a notification when there's a task assigned to you. So for instance, on the transaction that we just pushed through, as a member of the legal team, I'm getting an email that's saying this document requires my attention. I have single click navigation to that document to take action. As I use that single click navigation, it's going to take me directly to the document. Again, this document's been run for demonstration purposes a few times, over the course of our conversations. However, it's important to call out that I also have the ability, if I were within the CLM universe already, I can always pick up this task as it's generated and becomes available to my group. So I can click the task here, or I can click from that email. Ultimately, it takes me to the same place. It's going to take me to the document directly. And within this, I have predetermined instructions and predetermined options for where I want to route this document. So as an example, if I want to route this to tier 2 legal, I have that ability. If it's ready to go for signature, same thing. I can also cancel and archive the transaction, assuming I have the permissions to do so. The options that you see on the left-hand side here are not hard-coded, as a default setup, but instead are customized based on the client requirements to satisfy the workflow element that you have. And so at every position within the workflow, these can be set up in different ways to give people different options and different directional routing of the document so that it's fit for purpose for how your true day in the life contract process flows. I'm running the analysis step on the right-hand side here. And what you're going to see is a scorecard for procurement type of model hits. And what that means is when we talk about models and extractions, we're talking about the presence or absence of key content within the document. So what this is doing, and again, this is for example purposes, we're saying there are 3 potentially high-risk items within this document. There are 3 low risk, and it's giving you the extraction content and what exists against that. Running from a presence and absence perspective, we're basically saying, based on our legal playbook, based on something that we would, work with you all to take your expertise and put into an activated scorecard. If this content exists within the document, within this form, we want to associate a risk profile to it. And what that's doing is it's giving your internal user base the ability to very quickly see target content. This is one example. I'm going to show another example in a minute. But what it does is it's one-click navigation to the key focus area, and it can be set up to meet your team's needs. And it can also be set up to be user group specific. So maybe the legal team has a specific scorecard. Maybe a subject matter expert has a different scorecard, and all of that can be customized to fit Capital One's preferences. So I'm taking a minute just to run an additional scorecard so you can see what the variety looks like. And why this is important is because the deployment of the AI capability on contracts that are in flight, meaning net new documents processed through CLM, documents that are, effectively created on that go forward basis, you've got the ability to deploy this capability. But it's important to note that you can also deploy the same capability against the legacy set of documents that may exist. So for example, if you have 10,000 documents post-execution that already exist before you start to embark on your CLM journey and before you implement the CLM solution, you can use the same AI capability to get the target extractions and understand the content in an automated way from that legacy set. So it's important to think about this as, a capability that's not just for a go forward exercise, but can support look back exercises as well. So within this, you can see the risk profile associated with this document. The only thing is a medium risk element for the indemnification clause. Where we have different versions of this document, I'll show you one in a minute that has a termination for convenience clause. You can meet the user base where they currently work. So on a different version of this document that I have in Microsoft Word, you see a different profile associated with the same scorecard. Why this is important. The DocuSign Analyzer tab up top is where DocuSign helps embed with a plugin the same AI capability in Microsoft Word. So supporting legal teams and your internal users, most frequently they're going to be remediating documents or editing documents in Microsoft Word, and this is putting the power of that AI capability at their fingertips. On the right-hand side here, you can see again, single-click navigation to target content. This is mocked up for demonstration purposes, but what it does, it allows us to remediate documents as necessary. Again, this is a very fictionalized example for demonstration. However, you can see how this would translate into a great capability for your teams to start to assess and expedite that review process through negotiation. Third-party paper negotiation is accelerated through items like this. So within about a minute, and again, this is a dev environment, so it's actually a little bit slower than a production environment, but within a minute or so, the scorecard rerun against this example document, now showing the absence of target content, we're going to see a new scorecard output associated with that. And so as an example of the remediation process, this is where you can start to think about creatively how your legal playbook can start to benefit if it were utilized in this type of system. So the high risk element around termination for convenience is no longer part of this document's profile. Now we're creating a risk profile for this third party paper that's informed by a legal playbook that you've set the guidelines to previously, meaning the legal team doesn't even necessarily need to be here at this point in the process because we're empowering users to see that guidance in real time. Of course, it's totally at your election if you want to have, a legal team member as this review person, but it gives you the ability to start to preliminarily route and understand document content using the body of knowledge and expertise that you all already have. One of the great things about this as well is that you can use the clause library to further empower users. So if we were to go through and pick, okay, data privacy, we need to go into a data privacy clause and show what that looks like and start to input this content. This is where we have the ability to take that legal playbook that probably already exists and is used by the legal team to support negotiation and support end users in their contracting journey. You can automatically input target content using this clause library aspect. So between the automated risk surfacing of the scorecard, as well as the clause library, we have the ability to identify risk and start to actively remediate that risk while the contract is in flight, maximizing your team's time and maximizing the institutional and legal knowledge that you all have already. Toggling back, I do want to show a version control element as well. One thing to note before we go there is that we're creating metadata profiles around every document. We're creating the ability to compare documents one against the next. Going back out to the task list, I do want to show what it looks like on a previous run. This is one that we did the other day, so that you can see what version control starts to look like. So as we make edits to documents, do you necessarily need the AI capability up front? Not necessarily. There's also ways to start to look at the document and compare the document one against the next. And so this is another version, and we can start to go into a compare functionality where we have other versions to compare it to. So version 1 versus version 2. Where track changes are used. This came up on our live demonstration the other day. What does that look like? One of the benefits there is that you can start to see track changes, whether they're accepted or not, and that content is automatically surfaced for you. What you see here at the right-hand side is the ability to comment. I'm going to add a comment on the document that we ran today, just so you can see what that looks like. The benefit of this is it's supporting collaboration within the tool, within the workflow, within that holistic view of the contracting process. We want to identify and be able to engage users in a way that's highly streamlined. So I'm going to mention myself again. Bear with me as I play all the roles today. And again, this is a fictional exercise. However, I think it'll show the functionality well. So I can target content and then target the user. So if I'm the subject matter expert that needs to assess a certain provision, I can do that through this tool. This is keeping all of those communications self-contained. All of the comments that you see that are done in this way or at the task when I'm going to send it to the next person in the queue, these messages and this commentary is part of the audit trail for the document, but is never exposed to the counterparty. So distinguished from comments that are put on the actual Word document in normal Word functionality, you're not exposing this internal dialogue to the counterparty. Conversely, if you did need to add comments to the document and send that to the counterparty, you do the exact same functionality as you typically do within the Microsoft Word application itself. So this is just giving another layer of capability for your internal user base. So as mentioned with the task functionality, if you have a task assigned to you, you also have an email notification indicating that. So you don't need to be logged into CLM 24/7. The same thing works for that @mention capability. So the comment functionality, the ability to engage your colleagues and collaborate on a document, you have that, and it's going to notify them via email as well. So it's really supporting, acceleration of that collaboration, acceleration of the negotiation phase, and really helping teams work together harmoniously within the overall system. Going back to the task, we're going to send this for tier 2 legal, and I want to show what that looks like so you can see additional options at that task. As this starts to load, it's going through the workflow process that you already saw. So we're starting to route like a football play, the X's and O's, across the field, where are things going, when they need to go, and what does that look like? And I'm not sure if it comes through on the recording, but my email just chimed again because now it's generating another task. And as I wear that third hat, that tier 2 legal approver, now I'm going to get that task and it's going to load up. As mentioned, and as you just saw, the commentary that's captured, you can present that to the users. Why this is important, so that as you're engaging in, internal personnel, whether it's a legal team member or whether it's the COO or whoever you need to engage with from an approval process, you can provide to them content and informed elements so that their review is expedited. So they have context for that contract and where did it come from and what do they need to look at. Again, all of this to expedite the overall process. And again, to keep the recording relatively short, I do want to show the other routing option that we have, and that's to send for external review. So again, using one of the example documents that we have, third-party paper, assume that the negotiation process has been completed on the internal review aspect, and now we're going to send it back out for external review. We have the capability to do that, to add recipients, to change recipients, again, I'm wearing all hats today, to provide notifications, to provide custom email content, instructions, due dates, everything that might be useful to help expedite the external review process. When I click send, I do want to show what the external review looks like as compared to internal. So on the internal user base, we have the ability to see an AI scorecard. We've harnessed the AI to take our legal playbook and put it in action. We have additional data profiles that give us a greater capability from an information transparency perspective. We can see tasks and assign tasks to people. We can manage tasks. We can set things up so that we can claim or reassign tasks to support internal bandwidth needs. But from that external review point, it's going to be a limited functionality. When I say limited functionality, I mean streamlined functionality so that the external user, your counterparty, has a very easy interaction with the document, ease of editing that document and then sending it back to you. So we're keeping it in quotes within the workflow, and we're supporting your counterparty, expediting their process. Again, they've got a limited view. It's not going to be as robust as the internal user base that we're really catering for through this process. But we're also being sure to engage the counterparty in a way that's meaningful and easy and doesn't slow the process. So on the current screen from this email, you can see that as the external party now, I've received the document for my review. I've got the document as a Word document as an attachment, and then I've got some instructions that tell me what I need to do. I also have the ability in the instruction to either reply to this email with the attachment, which keeps the document within the workflow. I can also review the document online. Why this is so powerful is because it gives me the ability to just quickly interact. If I need to send this document to external counsel, I can have that interaction and then I can come back to this email. I also have the ability, if I were the external party, to not reply to this email, but to just send my point of contact that document outside of this email thread. The internal user has the ability to complete the step on my behalf and effectively keep the document within the workflow. DocuSign as a program, as a product, plenty of instructions, ease of use is top of mind. Similar to what you see with the e-signature platform, the CLM interaction for a counterparty is also streamlined and set up for ease of use. Instructions on what to do to interact with the document. Same document that we've seen a few different times now for demonstration purposes. You can ignore the version control up top just because we're running multiple workflows at once. I have the ability as the counterparty to download this document or to proceed as is. So in my review, I'm going to download the document. I'm going to make an edit. And what that's going to do is it's giving us the ability to interact, edit, and then go back to the Capital One team with my version. If I didn't want to download and edit that document, I can simply click next and move on. For demonstration purposes, since we've shown the compare function, as that document comes back with any kind of edit, you always have the compare function to immediately surface what the change is. Additionally, because we can run the AI capability against it, if there was a material change or material clause that's target content that we're identifying as a potential risk item, we have the ability to automatically surface that. For speed today, I'm going to click skip here. I'm not going to upload a changed document. But instead, I'm going to leave a comment because I do want to show the audit trail that exists for all of these documents as we run them through the process. This completion point is giving a timestamp against this. The timestamp is important from an internal perspective, usually because you want to see at the transaction level what occurred on what day, at what time, by whom. So all of these details are available to you at any time for any document. We're creating a very robust audit trail, a very robust metadata profile for every document that's processed through the CLM system. Again, transparency gain, added information profiles, added, expedited paths to the workflow, being able to control the workflow and control directionally how things proceed in a way that's easy for the counterparty as well as for your internal teams. So we've talked about the email volume here, and you're seeing a lot of emails on the demo today because it's important to, again, note that I'm wearing many hats. But now as an internal user, I get an email notification that there's been feedback on my document. It's been returned to me by the external party, and I've got single-click navigation to get there. And so again, what it's doing is it's giving me access to the document within the CLM universe without having to go through, any kind of hurdles to get there. I have the ability to compare versions. I have the ability to analyze the document again and run the analysis if I wanted to do so. All of this is putting advanced capabilities at my fingertips. Against this document, though, I also want to show the history because what we've created, multiple demonstrations now, is we're creating an audit trail behind the scenes. It's very granular. And so when you look at this audit trail from the point of initiation, and this is the one that I did a few days ago, you can see every electronic touch point, every metadata element that was updated, every workflow process, every human process, every review, every comment, every component part for this document as it exists within the workflow is being captured. And this information profile is going to live as long as the document does. So 6 months from now, if you ever had to investigate a transaction, you have all attendant details that might be relevant to that investigation. Similarly, within the repository, just to show search functionality briefly, we're talking about a folder structure that can be customized to fit Capital One's needs, to fit the elements within Capital One's organization. Again, demo purposes, it's very limited. But what we do when we do expansion of enterprise clients is that different use cases and groups can have permissions to different folders as necessary. You always have the ability to have an advanced search capability. And so what that looks like is, as we go in, we can start to filter for what documents are we looking at? What are we really looking to find? Do I want to do a keyword search? And what does that look like? And so between the tasks and the dashboard and everything else, you're really giving your internal user base, including reporting elements, the ability to very quickly get the information that they need at any given time. Where this demonstration really started, though, multiple days ago, was with a BI dashboard. And I want to come back to that because that shows the aggregate view of the entire universe, again, supporting remediation efforts if necessary, or supporting the organization on any kind of exercise that you need to do around contract data. So the first demonstration that the Capital One team saw with my colleagues was around a BI dashboard that's pulling up effectively some automation of extractions and documents that have been analyzed with the AI capability for different elements. And again, this is all publicly available sort of placeholder contracts that generate this information. You can start to put together heat maps and prioritization of what needs remediation or not based on component parts. And so it becomes very interactive in terms of how you want to assess documents and document populations and what does it look like and what are the key things, whether it's third-party risk management or anything else that you need to do to start to unpack elements within those document sets. Again, this functionality is just putting things at your fingertips. Relatedly, the risk scoring mechanism that we've talked about a few times, the red, amber, green, high, medium, low, those scorecards can be stood up and configured to meet Capital One's needs. So whether the legal playbook needs to be specific to a certain business unit or agreement type or a subject matter expert, all of that can be configured to really expedite the process for you all. So I hope this demonstration was helpful today. Again, we've got a lot of horsepower behind the system and what that looks like. And as we see, no matter where you start, whether you're starting in Salesforce or whether you're starting within CLM, and the right back here, you can see external review, stage and time at stage. All of this starts to serve a greater purpose, and that is a harmonious view of contracting, creating a center of excellence around contracting, giving the legal teams the ability to take their expertise and to distribute it as necessary across the process so that you can really expedite things and accelerate things and do it within a controlled and repeatable, defensible way. So appreciate everybody's time again on the recorded demo. For just closing thoughts, this is the Cimplifi team conducting the demonstration today. We're a platinum partner of DocuSign and really support clients in all things contract lifecycle management as well as contract analytics. Thank you for your time.